Hey everyone, Jim Morrison here. Today I got Tracy Osborn, and she's a 3-time published development author. She has done some terrific work, and she's working on her 4th book right now. Tracy, how are you doing today?
A little bit of an update. I'm doing great. It's actually a revised version of my first book, so I only have 3 books.
We won't tell.
I have them here. It's okay. You can keep it. Sorry. But
It
3
sure
books.
Look, I love the color palette you chose for those,
Thank you.
those covers. It looks really good. Pops probably right off the shelf.
Yeah, it's fun being I DIY the whole thing. Like I have a background in design, but I also do development and all that jazz. So it's been a fun side project when I'm working on my own web stuff. It's been fun to release and work on these books.
Oh, I bet. So what got you into your journey for the development field?
Back in the day, I started a startup, and in that whole process, such a long story, but in short, I taught myself how to code using Python and Django to build this startup and become a solo founder. And in the 8 years since I've done that, I've taught myself more Python, more Django. I've started working in JavaScript. I've become a much better developer. And during that time, I also started thinking about, I want to start a new project because, like anyone does who works in the web, I want to constantly be working on new projects. And then B, the process of learning how to code was really, really tough at teaching myself how to code. And as I had figured things out, I kind of looked back on those original tutorials and I thought, well, I could do that better. I think I have a better idea of how to teach coding. So that led to my first book, which is Hello Web App. It's a tutorial walking through the process of building a web app using Python and Django, because I love Python. I love JavaScript too, but Python I find so much easier to read and simpler because you have this distinction between the front end and the back end. And to teach myself how to code, that's kind of my audience, people who don't have a background in doing a lot of JavaScript or a lot of programming, found it was a better language to learn. So it's a pretty small, easy little book to go through. And that came out a few years ago. And now today I'm doing a release where I'm combining it with the second book, which is the orange one. It's now going to be one book set, and it comes with new videos, updated to Python 3 and Django 2.0 and all the new technologies. And it's a big update, and I'm doing the Kickstarter for that.
That's fantastic. And we'll definitely have the link for the Kickstarter down below in the description. So would you say that because your books are of smaller scale and it's easily digestible, it's a great start for someone that's wanting to get into web development or development in general through Python and Django?
Yeah, that's on purpose. I did not, you see a lot of development books out there released by some of the big publishers, and they're gigantic books. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of for me, I'm aiming for someone who was a web designer like I was, who knew HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript, and they knew how to make static websites. But when you're like that person, you also see all these other websites that have registration forms, and they store information and they do things with information. And I was like, how do they do that? How can I make a website that does that too? And I had ideas for websites I wanted to build. So I wanted to write the book for that person who just was I have a background in doing web design stuff, and I want to learn how to build a web app and get that thing working. But I don't want to be look at this giant tome that's here's how a computer works, and here's how methods and classes work, and here's everything that's going on in the background. That stuff, personally, I can't do it. My eyes, my head, I turn into a blob. Everything glazes over. I can't handle that information. I just want to know how to build something. I just like working on products. So I wanted to have something that looked easy to pick up, easy to go through. And in this book, it goes from creating an idea. I walk through a very general tutorial format, which is I call a collection of things. I wanted someone to build something custom to them. They don't just follow the tutorial verbatim. They're building something that uses my tutorial format. And hopefully by adding that creativity and that kind of a little bit more, being more involved in the process of building this web app, hoping that information sticks better. And then at the end, you launch on Heroku. Hopefully then you can show it to friends and family, give feedback, and then just continue your coding journey.
Fantastic. It sounds like a terrific starting point.
Yeah, it's everything I learned from teaching coding to myself, how I wish it was taught. I wrote the book that I wish existed when I was learning.
Right. Man, I could see where it really paid dividends. What was your like publishing the first book for yourself? Like,
It
what was
was,
the process? How
yeah,
overwhelming, I imagine.
it was really scary. It was like a big jump because I thought originally like, oh, maybe I'll get a publishing deal from like something like an event, a book apart who does a lot of really awesome small tech books. And they turned me down. So then I was looking at some of the bigger publishers like O'Reilly and whatnot, and realized that if I published with them, I could, I would have the support of someone like an editor telling me what to do, which is a good or bad thing, depending. I'm pretty stubborn, so maybe a bad thing. And they would do the design of the book, but I have background design. I thought, oh, I could do that myself. And they could help me with marketing, except not really. I've heard that they say they'll help with marketing, but they really don't. So I looked at all of that, and then I looked at Kickstarter, which is why I'm doing another Kickstarter. This is my 4th Kickstarter. I realized that if I do a Kickstarter for the books, I can promote the books. People will hear about it through Kickstarter. People like to share Kickstarters. That I could build myself in advance, essentially, that the publisher would give me. But I'd probably get more money than the advance through Kickstarter, which I have every time. And then the other thing is I would keep 100% of the royalties. So it kind of seemed like a no-brainer to do the really scary thing, which was to rely on Kickstarter. But the other side of it is if the Kickstarter wasn't successful, I'd have a really good way of telling that people actually don't want what I was trying to build. So it's a good little litmus test that if the Kickstarter fails, then maybe I can move on in my life without having to spend all this time building a book and trying to sell it and then realize then that people don't want it.
Yeah, definitely testing the market to make sure that there is a drive for it, that people want that type of book and can benefit from it. So it's a terrific test.
And that's why with this new edition, where the content is mostly the same, but there's been like technical updates with the new Python and Django versions, and some content updates and some image updates. But really, it hasn't changed. But Kickstarter is such a good platform for doing the pre-sale and allowing me to start raising some money, because I also insist on having always a physical book. I have to spend thousands of dollars to get that printed. And then I sell those books after I get them printed. So it also gives me some opportunity to bring in some money so I can get those shipped off to the printer.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. So let's say a fresh developer goes, he picks up your books, he's excited, he or she reads through them. What's the next step for her to break into the field? Now that she's built a couple sample apps, what would you say is a great differentiator for those that want to jump into their first junior dev role or start contracting as a freelancing developer?
That's such a great question that I can't really answer, because my journey was I built my first web app and I started learning development, and then I was able to build it into a startup. And it hasn't been like a runaway success startup like those like Airbnbs of the world. But over the last 8 years, like I took that like little side project and I started growing it and started getting more users and people working on it. And then I got into a few startup programs in the Bay Area. I got a grant to allow me to work full time on it. And then I got into 500 startups, which then gave me a bigger chunk of money. I didn't raise any extra money after that, but it kind of fell into this full-time job for me, which has been really awesome though, because I continued to learn and I got to learn at my own pace. I had to do a lot of problem solving with Wedding Lovely to figure out like, what's the next thing I need to build in order to grow this company. So to this day, I now contract. I'm working on a contract right now actually for Django and this JS framework called Reactive, which almost no one uses. So I do some contracting nowadays just to bring in some extra money. But it's, a lot of people say, okay, go out there and get your engineering job, but that's not the only thing you have to do, which is awesome. Like you could turn your side hustle into your full-time hustle. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like really living that dream.
Yeah, there's a lot. I would spend hours telling you all the terrible things that happen as well. Mainly, like if I had a job, I'd be making a lot more money than I have been over the last 8 years. But it's been fun having the freedom though of just working and trying to problem solve and learning more about development and continuing this journey.
100%. I mean, with you contracting and you publishing your own books, it gives you control of your fate. You get to decide what happens tomorrow and today, and it's you that sets the tone for the future.
Yeah,
and it's very empowering.
Yeah, and I've used it to break into conference speaking, which has been really fun. Like 3 years ago, I decided I was going to try to speak at conferences, and then because I had the freedom to make my own schedule and not have to worry about taking time off from a job, I decided to just fill out a 1.5 billion conference call for proposals, and ended up like that first year I had my first talk in November. And then the following year I spoke at 17 different conferences. And then last year I spoke at 15 different conferences, but they were harder because there was more keynotes this year. And then now this year I'm taking some time off because I overdid it. But that was really cool. It was a cool opportunity to have that story of teaching myself how to code and then using that process to write these books and help teach people to learn how to design, which is my third book, or learn how to code, which is the Hello Web App books. I was able to travel to a lot of places around the world. I went to Buenos Aires. I spoke at NodeConf there, spoke at NodeConf in Budapest, London. I'm going to Germany this year. It was a really cool side opportunity from doing this journey.
Wow, I can only imagine, especially to reach so many people at those conferences. I mean, that's how I stumbled upon you, was a terrific talk you gave at Web University 2017. And I totally felt touched by the whole conference talk you gave about bringing a product to the market and the struggles that came with it, which I'll link down below in the description for those that want to check it out.
I will say that for anyone who's learning how to code or starting a new process, it might seem like you have to be an expert to start speaking about it, but not so. It's actually better to talk about how you learn things fresh. You don't have to wait. If you're learning Node, you can go out there and start writing about how you learned Node while you're doing it, or go to a conference and talk about the challenges you found. You don't have to wait to be an expert to start getting these speaking opportunities if that's something you want to do. You can start that very early on. And conferences are looking for that kind of content. They're not just looking for someone who's old and stodgy and has been doing this forever and they're just going to drone on about all the expert things that no one knows about. They want those new voices and those people to talk about those challenges or how they've learned things.
That's exactly right. When you have these fresh talks about, beginning web development or learning about this JavaScript library, there are many of those that watch these conferences talks that are just starting out and can really benefit from those types of talks.
Yeah, and that was my first conference talk ever, was at DjangoCon. I don't remember the year. I think it was a long time ago, but it was talking about how I taught myself Django. I wrote a blog post detailing out what happened. And then I was able to take that blog post and submit it to DjangoCon, who then said that they would love to have me speak at their conference in Portland. And then from that same year, I got an invitation from a GitHub conference in Miami, and they flew me in, actually. I think I got financial aid for DjangoCon, but the Miami one, they flew me in, they gave me a hotel room, and I was able to give that same talk again at GitHub's CodeConf. So I think it's 2011. So yeah, that story, I wasn't an expert programmer. I wasn't even an intermediate programmer, but I was able to use that story to do some speaking, which was really cool.
Wow. Incredible. So let's say many years from now, you've led a very successful development career. You've released a ton of books that have helped a plethora of people along the way. What is the legacy that you would like to leave behind when people think of Tracy Osborn?
My joy. So what makes me really happy is to build products and see people use my products. And I have such joy in doing that, which is why I've started writing books to help people do the same thing, which is kind of, I write what I know, but I hope that people who knew me and have followed my books that have started to release their own products or started to learn how to design or learn how to do development through what I've done, and that they've started to then pass that knowledge on to others. I think it's passing it on and help, as I've learned, I've tried to help teach other people, and hopefully those people will teach other people. And I hope that will be the legacy that I leave behind.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, I really appreciate you coming here, Tracy. We're going to have Tracy's information, how to reach out to her, how to fund her Kickstarter down below in the description. Tracy, I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Have a great one, all right?
All right. Thank you.
Be sure to swing by Tracy Osborn's Kickstarter to help her fund her revised version of Hello Web App 2.0. Build your first web app with Django 2. It's definitely a great starting point for those that are interested in jumping into the wild world of web development through Python. Also, be sure to like and subscribe this video. If there's anything you'd like to see in the near future, be sure to drop it in the comments below. Have a great one.